All right, get ready, because we're about to take a deep dive into a collection of hypnosis MP3s, all focused on self-improvement.
Yeah.
Our listeners sent these in, and they cover some fascinating ground right now. Stop self-sabotage, trust again, unrequited love, willpower, even one called winner.
Wow, that's quite the collection. It's like a toolkit for rewiring your brain for success.
Totally. But before we hit play on these MP3s,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we can kind of unpack what we have here, set the stage a bit.
Absolutely. What I find really fascinating about these MP3s is they each seem to address those subtle ways we kind of get in our own way.
Right.
It's like it goes beyond just positive thinking.
Hmm.
This is about uncovering those deep-seated patterns that hold us back sometimes, even before we realize what's happening.
I feel that. I mean, I love a good self-help book, but I still catch myself falling into the same traps.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, why do I always wait until the last minute to start projects?
Right.
Is that self-sabotage?
It very well could be. And that's exactly what this first MP3, Stop Self-Sabotage, aims to explore. It begins with this interesting analogy about a monkey and a nut jar. Have you heard that one?
It rings a bell, but refresh my memory.
Sure. So imagine a monkey, right? And its hand is stuck in this jar because it's desperately clinging onto a nut inside. The monkey really wants that nut,
Oh, I see.
but it can't pull its hand free because it won't let go. The MP3 uses this analogy to demonstrate how self-sabotage isn't always about making the wrong choice, but rather about holding on to something that we perceive as valuable but ultimately traps us.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do we figure out what our nut is? What am I clinging to that might be holding me back?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? The MP3 points to some usual suspects. Fear of success, fear of rejection, or maybe just those deep-seated negative self-beliefs we've carried with us for years and years.
Fear of success. That seems a little counterintuitive. I mean, wouldn't we all want to succeed?
Logically, yes, but success can come with a lot of changes and uncertainty. What if you achieve your goals and you're still unhappy? What if your relationships change? What if you end up with more responsibility than you feel you can handle? Sometimes that fear of the unknown can lead us to, well, kind of sabotage our own efforts, unconsciously, of course, just to avoid facing those possibilities.
That's a really good point. So it's not just about wanting to succeed. It's also about feeling ready for what comes with it.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the fear of rejection? That one definitely hits close to home.
That's a huge one, and it often goes back to past experiences. Maybe you were criticized a lot as a child, or maybe some of your relationships haven't ended well.
Mm-hmm.
These experiences can create a real deep-seated fear of judgment or rejection, even in situations where it's probably unlikely.
Right, so we end up kind of creating these self-fulfilling prophecies.
Hmm.
We expect to be rejected, so we act in ways that actually push people away. And then, surprise, surprise, we feel rejected. It's like this vicious cycle.
Exactly. That MP3 gives a couple of really vivid examples. Like, there's this guy who keeps missing deadlines at work. Not because he can't do the work, but because he's terrified of his boss's feedback. He's putting himself out there and risking that criticism.
I see.
But of course, it ends up hurting his career over time.
So it's like he's choosing to fail on his own terms instead of facing the possibility of maybe failing publicly.
Right. And then there's a woman who sabotages every relationship before it even gets serious
Oh.
because she's just terrified of getting hurt. So she assumes every relationship will end badly and kind of unconsciously creates drama and conflict to ensure that it actually does.
That's really sad to think of all the joy and connection she's missing out on because of this fear.
It is, and these are just two examples. I'm sure, you can see how these patterns can show up in all areas of life. The key takeaway here is that self-sabotage is a lot of times a protective mechanism.
Okay.
It's our subconscious trying to keep us safe from what it sees as danger, even if that safety comes with a pretty big cost.
Okay, so then how do we break out of this self-sabotage cycle? The MP3 mentions relaxing with the idea of success and relaxing with the idea of rejection. To be honest, that sounds a little too, I don't know, too zen for me. How can you relax when everything inside is screaming danger?
I know it sounds a little counterintuitive, but hear me out. It's about shifting our focus away from that need for outside validation.
Okay.
So instead of chasing approval and trying to avoid all criticism, we can choose to find satisfaction from within.
From within.
The MP3 quotes explorer Sir Richard Burton. He said, "Go do what thy manhood bids thee do. From none but self, expect applause."
I love that quote. It's like a call to action.
Right.
Do what feels right to you, regardless of what anyone else might think. But how do we actually get to that level of self-trust, especially when those old voices of fear and doubt keep creeping back in?
Well, it's like tending a garden, you know? You can plant the seeds and water them, give them sunlight, but you can't actually force them to grow.
Right.
You got to trust the process.
I like that analogy. So you're saying we should focus more on our efforts rather than the outcomes.
Exactly. We can control the input, our time, energy, our dedication, but we can't always control what comes out. Sometimes the best we can do is kind of set the stage for success and then just trust that things will unfold naturally.
So it sounds like trust is a key theme here.
Yeah,
Not just trusting ourselves, but trusting in, I don't know, something bigger,
absolutely.
something maybe beyond our control. And speaking of trust, that leads us to our next MP3, trust again. I got to be honest, this one makes me a little nervous. I've definitely had my share of trust issues in the past.
Oh, yeah. Trust is a tricky thing, isn't it? It's so essential for connection, for intimacy, but it also leaves us vulnerable to, well, getting hurt.
Hmm.
The MP3 acknowledges this right away. It talks about how past betrayals can create a sort of trust meter inside us that
Right.
gets stuck on low. So it makes it hard to really open up to new people, even if they've given us no reason to doubt them.
Okay, the trust meter analogy, that's really resonating with me. It's like, even when I meet someone amazing, there's still this part of me that's like bracing for impact, waiting for things to go wrong.
Yeah, and the MP3 uses this really powerful image to illustrate this point. Imagine a river flowing towards this huge waterfall.
Okay.
The river's terrified of going over the edge, but the wind whispers, "Trust me, I can carry you over safely." But the river hesitates. It clings to what it knows, even though it's on this path that leads to destruction.
It's like that old saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. But in this case, the devil you know is like a guaranteed disaster.
Exactly.
So how do we convince that inner river to trust the wind? How do we, I don't know, recalibrate that trust meter?
Well, it's a process, and
Yeah.
it starts with self-awareness. We need to be able to recognize our own patterns, understand how past experiences might be influencing how we see things now. If someone you loved betrayed you, it's totally natural to be cautious about trusting anyone deeply. But just recognizing that that caution might be rooted in past hurt can help you approach new relationships with more clarity.
Okay, so instead of just assuming everyone's going to betray us, we can start to see each new person as an individual worthy of our trust until they prove otherwise.
Right, exactly. And that's where boundaries come in.
Okay.
Boundaries are so important for creating a sense of safety and predictability in relationships. They help us to kind of define what behaviors are okay and not okay and protect ourselves emotionally. And by communicating those boundaries clearly and sticking to them, we can build trust gradually, brick by brick.
Boundaries make a lot of sense, but the MP3 also talks about vulnerability as being a key ingredient in building trust. Isn't that a bit risky? I mean, why would we want to make ourselves vulnerable when we're already afraid of getting hurt?
It's a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
We want to protect ourselves from getting hurt, but closing ourselves off completely just leads to more isolation and loneliness. Vulnerability is really about letting people see the real you, imperfections and all. It's about taking that risk of being hurt, because the potential reward of really connecting with someone is so much greater.
So it's about choosing to trust. Even though there's always that chance of getting hurt, it's having faith that the right people will treat us with care.
And that is a scary leap of faith, especially if you've been burned before. But think about it this way. If you never let anyone in, you'll never get to experience the joy of true intimacy, It's a risk worth taking.
That's powerful. It reminds me of that quote, the only way to have a friend is to be one.
Oh, I love that.
You have to be willing to open up, to be vulnerable, to risk getting hurt if you want to experience that true joy of connection.
Absolutely. And, this kind of brings us back to self-sabotage. A lack of self-trust can be a huge factor in those self-defeating patterns.
Okay.
When we don't trust ourselves to make good choices, to handle difficult emotions, to bounce back from setbacks, we're more likely to engage in behaviors that kind of confirm those negative beliefs.
So building trust in ourselves is just as important as building trust in others.
Excellent.
It's about believing in our own strength, resilience, our ability to navigate, all the ups and downs.
Exactly. And that kind of inner strength is what we're going to explore in our next MP3, Willpower. Now, this one really piqued my interest because it seems to suggest that we can actually strengthen our willpower through hypnosis.
Is that even possible?
I know, no.
I'm a little skeptical, but also really intrigued. I mean, it feels like my willpower is constantly running on empty.
Right.
Is there really a way to, boost it?
Well, the MP3 starts by kind of reframing how we think about willpower. It challenges the idea that it's this limited resource that gets depleted as we use it.
Okay.
Instead, it presents willpower as an energy source that we can actually tap into and amplify.
Okay, so instead of thinking of it as a muscle that gets tired, we should think of it more like a wellspring that we can constantly draw from.
That's the idea, and it uses this really powerful image of like ancient Chinese warriors, their unwavering focus, their absolute determination to achieve victory. The MP3 suggests that we all have that same warrior spirit within us, just waiting to be awakened.
I love that imagery.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like I have this like hidden reserve of strength just waiting to be unleashed. But how do we actually tap into it?
Well, the MP3 really emphasizes the power of visualization.
Okay.
It talks about creating this mental blueprint for success, seeing yourself achieving your goals with absolute clarity. By repeatedly engaging in this mental rehearsal, you're essentially kind of programming your subconscious mind for success.
So it's not just about wishing or hoping for success. It's about seeing it, feeling it, believing it with every fiber of your being. It's creating that self-fulfilling prophecy of victory.
Exactly. And it also highlights this really crucial link between willpower and focus.
Okay.
You know, when our focus is sharp and unwavering, our willpower naturally increases. It's like a laser beam, cutting through distractions and propelling us towards our goals.
So it's not just about having willpower. It's about channeling it effectively, directing it towards what really matters.
Right. And that's where the hypnotic suggestions come in. The MP3 uses specific techniques to kind of enhance focus, quiet that mental chatter that can distract us, and help us tap into a deeper level of concentration.
So it's not just about forcing ourselves to resist temptation. It's about training our minds to stay present, to stay aligned with what we really want.
Exactly. And that brings us to our final MP3, Winner, which explores how all of these elements come together to create a winning attitude. It starts with a pretty bold statement. It says, winners don't just win, they set the scene for winning.
That's interesting. What does it mean to set the scene for winning?
It's about more than just wanting to win. It's about cultivating a belief in yourself, a conviction that victory is attainable. The MP3 uses this analogy of Zen archers. They don't aim to hit the target, they become one with it.
Okay, that sounds very Zen.
Yeah.
But how does that translate to real life? How do we, become one with our goals?
It's about fully embodying your goals, visualizing success with absolute clarity, feeling the emotions of victory as if it's already happened. By repeatedly engaging in this mental rehearsal, you're creating a mental blueprint for success that guides your actions and propels you towards your goals.
So it's not about hoping to win, it's about knowing you will win.
Yeah.
It's about seeing yourself as a winner even before the competition begins.
Precisely. And this belief, this unwavering conviction, can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you truly believe in yourself, you radiate a different energy, a winning energy that attracts opportunities and inspires those around you.
This reminds me of the trump card analogy from the MP3.
Oh, yeah.
It suggests that winners approach challenges with a sense of inevitability, as if they're holding a secret weapon that guarantees their victory.
It's like they're playing a different game, a game where they've already won. And this confidence, this unshakable belief in themselves, often translates into real-world success.
But what about setbacks?
Yeah.
Even the most successful people experience failures and disappointments. How do winners handle those moments?
That's where resilience comes in. A winning attitude isn't about avoiding failure. It's about embracing challenges, learning from mistakes, and using setbacks as fuel for future growth.
So it's not about never falling down. It's about getting back up stronger than before.
Exactly. And that's where preparation plays a crucial role. Winners don't just rely on luck or talent. They put in the work, they hone their skills, they strategize, they analyze their opponents, they create a foundation of confidence through relentless preparation.
It's about mastering the fundamentals, understanding the game, and constantly striving for improvement.
And when setbacks do occur, they view them through the lens of a winner. You know, they ask, what can I learn from this? How can I use this experience to become even stronger?
So it's not about letting failure define you. It's about using it as a stepping stone to greater success.
And that brings us back to the power of visualization. The MP3 encourages listeners to not only visualize success, but also to visualize themselves, overcoming obstacles, handling setbacks with grace and resilience.
So it's about creating a mental blueprint for navigating, the inevitable ups and downs of life, equipping yourself with the mental tools to handle whatever comes your way.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a winning mindset that encompasses not just the desire to win, but also the mental fortitude to persevere through challenges and emerge even stronger on the other side.
Wow, this whole winning mindset thing is really resonating with me. It's like a light bulb just went off in my head.
Right.
But I have to ask, isn't there a fine line between a winning attitude and, well, just being arrogant?
That's a great question, and it's something the MP3 addresses directly. It emphasizes that a winning attitude isn't about ego or putting others down. It's about cultivating an inner confidence, a belief in your own abilities, and an unwavering determination to succeed while still being respectful and humble.
So it's not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about having that quiet, unshakable belief in yourself that allows you to shine without needing to dim anyone else's light.
Exactly. It's about recognizing your own worth and potential without needing external validation to confirm it.
As we've been talking about all these MP3s, I'm realizing there's a common thread running through them all. The idea of conscious choice. Whether it's overcoming self-sabotage, rebuilding trust, strengthening our willpower, or cultivating a winning attitude, it all comes down to making a choice.
That's a brilliant observation. These MP3s offer us tools and techniques, but ultimately the power to change lies within each of us. It's about recognizing that we're not just passive recipients of circumstances. We have the ability to choose how we respond to life's challenges.
It's like we're the captains of our own ships, navigating the sometimes stormy waters of life.
Hmm.
We can't always control the weather, but we can choose how we steer our ship, how we adjust our sails, and how we maintain our course, even when the winds are against us.
And that sense of agency is incredibly empowering. When we realize we have the power to choose our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions, we become the architects of our own destiny.
Okay, that's firing me up.
Yeah.
But I gotta be honest, sometimes it feels like those old patterns, those negative self-beliefs, are so ingrained that they're almost impossible to change. Like, how do I even begin to shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance?
It starts with awareness. The first step is recognizing those negative thought patterns that are holding you back. Pay attention to your self-talk, those little voices of doubt and fear that whisper, "You're not good enough," or "You'll never succeed."
So it's like shining a light on those shadowy parts of our minds, bringing them into our conscious awareness. But then how do we actually change those thoughts?
Once you've identified those negative thoughts, you can start to challenge them. Ask yourself, is this thought really true? What evidence do I have to support it? Is there another way of looking at this situation?
So it's like putting those thoughts on trial, cross-examining them to see if they hold up under scrutiny. And if they don't, we can choose to replace them with more empowering beliefs.
Exactly. Affirmations can be a powerful tool for this. Start by identifying the beliefs you want to cultivate, whether it's "I am capable," "I am worthy," or "I am resilient." Then repeat those affirmations to yourself regularly, especially when those old negative thoughts start to creep in.
It's like creating a new soundtrack for your mind, replacing those old worn-out tapes with something fresh and inspiring.
And remember, this is a process. It takes time and effort to rewire those deep-seated neural pathways. Be patient with yourself, celebrate small victories, and keep practicing.
This whole conversation has been so insightful. I feel like I'm walking away with a whole new understanding of myself and my potential.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you. Remember, the journey of self-improvement is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be ups and downs, moments of triumph, and moments of doubt. But as long as you keep moving forward, keep learning, keep growing, you're on the right track.
And for those of you listening out there, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you most? What insights are you taking away from this deep dive? Remember, you have the power to choose to challenge limiting beliefs, to rebuild trust, to harness your willpower, and to cultivate a winning mindset. So go out there and create the life you deserve. Until next time, keep diving deep.